Hello and welcome to episode 14 of Around the Lens, your weekly visual journalism roundtable podcast, where we talk with photojournalists and documentary filmmakers about all things related to our career field. I'm your host, David J. Murphy, a visual journalist with about 16 years experience, currently based out of Charleston, South Carolina.
And I'm your co-host, Zach D. Roberts, a photojournalist who works in New York and Alaska. I've worked for the BBC, The Guardian, but most recently, most of my work has been seen in The Village Voice.
Excellent. Zach, did you shoot any more primary action, or are you done with elections?
I just literally sent out a whole bunch of pitches to go down to, not go down for the March 1st primaries.
Okay.
Hopefully Massachusetts and, I don't know, maybe, I think Kansas? I'm trying to remember. I don't know. But,
nice. Well, good luck with that. Hope you get in there without any issues, and you can get all the candidates, whoever's left at that time. Probably be at least Trump. I'm sure Trump will still be in it. We've got a great show for you tonight. Two great panelists. Our panelists are Ben Weller and Stacy Pearsall. Panelists, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourselves?
Okay, hi, I'm Ben Weller. I'm an editorial and commercial photographer currently based in Nagoya, Japan. I've been freelancing for about 8 years. I've worked for Reuters, the BBC, the Wall Street Journal, and I'm represented by Zuma Press, and most recently here in Japan by Nippon News. My commercial work is generally in industry, including energy, shipbuilding, and logistics. And I'm a lecturer at Indiana University, Purdue University, Fort Wayne, where I teach an online course in visual communications. Thanks for having me on the show today.
Hey, I'm Stacy Pearsall. I am a freelance, or as some people like to call, independent entrepreneur photographer based out of Charleston, South Carolina. I've been a photographer for 20 years and been freelancing for the last 8. I focus mainly on portrait photography. I do photojournalism and commercial work to pay the bills, but I just try to stay diverse and have a lot of fun. So I also am a teacher, and I teach at some pretty reputable schools, I would hope. And thank you very much for including me on your panel tonight.
Hey, Stacy. Really happy to have you on. People should know that I've known Stacy for over 10 years now. Her and I actually went to Syracuse University together. We were both in the military photojournalism course. That's what I did back when I was a Marine. And, we've kept in touch. Stacy has always been a great resource for me. I actually had her on the first podcast I ever did, and we did her first ever interview on a podcast, on my podcast. So that was like about 6-7 years ago, so that was fun. So really happy to have you on my latest show, Stacy. So hoping you can enlighten us with all your experience from the Air Force and teaching and civilian life. And by the way, and I'm sure she'll plug this at the end, but Stacy has done great work with the Veterans Portrait Project, which is a really great project, just focusing on veterans and who they are with some awesome portraits. But we'll talk more about that later. Ben, you are in Japan. Let me ask you something. Do you know Martin Bailey?
Martin Bailey.
Does that name ring a bell?
I don't think so. No, not someone in Japan that I know. No.
Okay. No, he's a photographer, and he's actually got a podcast that's done over 500 episodes. He's been doing it for like 10 years. But he's in Japan. He owns a company there. So I thought, maybe you'd have heard about him, not necessarily that all photographers that work in Japan.
Yeah, it's not someone I know, and I just moved here about 6 months ago. I've started to meet some Japanese photojournalists, but I don't really know a lot of other foreign photographers working here. But that's something I'll look up. Yeah.
Yeah, check him out. He's a British guy, but he's been working in Japan for a long time, and he's got his own company there. So, you guys can go have lunch. If you do, let me know.
Okay, for sure.
I'll have you guys on the show together. But anyways, he's been doing this podcast thing for longer than all of us combined. All right. So before we get on with the show, I just want to do one quick thing. Last week I mentioned the AroundTheLens.com website. If you haven't checked it out, don't, because it's not done yet. But I am finalizing it, and hopefully by next week's show it'll be done. Yeah, I've been having some technical issues with the WordPress and everything, but I've ironed all that out. Now I just got to build the actual content. So I'll be working that over the course of this week. So check it out next week. Until then, go to djmphoto.com, which is down here on my lower third if you're watching live or if you're watching the rebroadcast, and go there for all the shows until I move everything over. But beyond that, Facebook, YouTube, subscribe, like, Twitter, follow, all that stuff. Okay, let's get on with the show. So our first topic of the evening goes into this subject matter I wasn't really ever tracking myself. But if you're like a world-renowned photojournalist, right? People know you, people have your name, and you're hired to shoot an ad campaign. Is there any sort of possibility that you could be using your name and image to necessarily promote a brand that maybe isn't the correct brand, or people might see it differently? In this instance, I include the link for. Steve McCurry did a photo shoot for a Valentino ad campaign where he actually photographed real-world figures to sell a product. There was these models in front of African dancers, and what made this interesting to me was Steve McCurry has been doing photojournalism forever. He's a longtime photojournalist. So from your perspective, is there any sort of pause that you might take in considering how your work might be used for commercial purposes? So for example, Stacy, you shoot a lot of veterans for your Veterans Portrait Project.
Mm-hmm.
If there was a commercial aspect to that, would you be hesitant in necessarily selling your work for a commercial means?
Well, one of the first assignments I had out of the service was a commercial assignment for a body armor company out of Europe. And as a photojournalist, it was really a different path for me because I wasn't used to setting things up. But what I realized was the knowledge that I took from being a photojournalist and actually seeing things firsthand, and I incorporated that into my commercial work. So instead of using actors or hiring actors for the photo shoots, I actually went out and did casting calls with National Guardsmen because I felt more comfortable. They'd be more comfortable in those roles and knowing exactly what I was looking for, and vice versa. So I guess it ultimately depends on what you're touting in terms of sales. For me, it just seemed an easy transition. It wasn't a conflict for me, but and I suppose that's how Steve McCurry also approached that situation too.
How about you, Ben? Have you had a mixture of photojournalism and commercial photography in your work?
Yeah, so the commercial photography I do is mainly sort of documenting projects for companies, like I said before, like energy companies and shipbuilding, and it's still pretty much well, it's not photojournalism because it's for a company. It's a commercial project, but they're not really using it for advertising purposes. It's mainly internal use, and they hire me because I do photojournalism. They don't want it to be really have that commercial feel, right? So I just sort of operate the same way I would in an editorial assignment for the most part. I don't really try to direct people. The one thing that is different is that when I'm working in an industrial setting and safety is really important, and I have to tell people, like, if they're not doing something safe, I have to say, like, I can't photograph you unless you do it the safe way, because you can't, the company can't use that, right? And it could actually get people in trouble. So that's a little bit different. So I don't, what Steve McCurry was doing is it's advertising, so it's a little bit different than what I do. I have to say that when I saw the work, I was a little surprised. I mean, I thought it was great work. It's beautiful. The pictures are beautiful. You wouldn't expect anything less from Steve McCurry, and I have great respect for him. I guess I have a little bit more of a problem with the company itself and like the concept of the advertising campaign. So yeah, I don't want to go through all my points here now, but one thing I thought is that the company probably should have seen the blowback coming, and if they didn't, then they didn't think through it hard enough.
The blowback, honestly, was probably part of the planned advertising campaign. When it comes to most of these fashion houses, this is really what they continually do this, whether it be, usually they don't hire really well-respected photojournalists, the guys who's made his name kind of covering the quote-unquote third world, and making those people, like basically taking portraits and making those people beautiful, or not making them, but photographing them beautifully. But this is kind of shockingly amazing that someone would, they specifically got, I've no doubt they got Stephen Curry specifically for this reason, that they could take his cred and then do the same thing that they continually do, which is take usually tall, skinny white models, put them with a bunch of African natives to get the tribal look, and then photograph their stuff. I mean, they do this continually. If you go through, and there's every couple months, I write it a lot in the, I write for a couple feminist sites and more lefty sites, and so I always see the kind of the cycle go in and out every couple months. Some fashion house does something completely ridiculous like this, and so this is nothing new to me. The only thing is that, I mean, could you imagine Sebastião Salgado being like doing an ad for De Beers, you know, like a diamond ad? I mean, it's just like, to me, that this is what this is. Like, he has lost, I love him and I respect him, but he's lost kind of all credibility for me, because usually these ads are attached to some nonprofit or something like that as well, and I haven't seen anything other than just, okay, well, we can justify having these models in the middle of Africa because it's Stephen Curry, and that's it.
So then, on an ethical standpoint, would any of you pause, you know, before, say, you were asked to do something like this? Or would there be any sort of line that you have before you would take part in a commercial work?
Well, I would say that, you know, the work that I do commercially fits in line with my like my own personal, you know, way of life and how I operate. So, but if somebody were to come to me and say, we want you to do an ad campaign about, you know, the exploitation of women in India, and we're gonna like do commercialism around sarongs and things like that, and the human trafficking aspect, like, I mean, that's, I suppose that's what this conversation, where this conversation is going, is you know, was it tasteful? That would be something that I would deeply have to think about in the context of it, and of course the blowback. I mean, and again, I have to say that a lot of this is opinion based. So what one may see as crass, another sees as it's a totally beautiful ad campaign. So for me, I would definitely be thinking hard about the clients I take and the assignments I take, which I still do today.
Ben?
Yeah, I agree with that too, and I think there's some information that's missing, and I haven't been able to find it, and so the article that you sent us about this from Time, they sort of talk about how this came about, that they brought the models over there. They decided Kenya would be a good place to shoot because they could get the whole crew in and everything, and then the way that they present it is just like they were out there shooting, and the tribes people happened to sort of be in the background, and Steve thought it'd be a great idea to kind of incorporate them, so he asked them, and they were cool with it. But that sounds a little weird to me, because if they're part of the picture for a commercial photograph, don't you need model releases, and wouldn't you probably pay these people to be in? And none of that is discussed.
Right.
And I haven't, you know, so if I knew more about that, if they approached these people and said, we'd like to hire you to be in these photographs, then, you know, that changes the situation. It might not make it still a good idea, but at least there's some transaction there, and I don't, you know, I just don't know. Do you guys know anything about that?
The interesting, the side point, which is made later in the article, that I don't know particularly on that, but the one thing I came across was that they tweeted out, or they Instagrammed a couple of the photos on the runway, or the fashion and the runway, and the tagline is primitive, tribal, spiritual, yet regal. And to me, this is just kind of the realm of, I mean, there's a reason why if you go to like Electric Daisy Carnival and you go to these places that they've actually started banning kids wearing native headdresses and everything like that. There's a huge issue within the entire fashion industry and photography when it comes to cultural appropriation and kind of like attaching yourself and cashing in, and then never including or returning the favor to the culture that you're stealing from. And but to basically attach this to a photo campaign where you're calling these people primitive, it's, you know, especially considering if anyone's ever done any research on like some of these tribes that are still look like this, they all have cell phones. They're running their things off of solar power. They're doing inventions that like are changing tech, like you know, travel tech, like beyond anybody else, and I don't know. It's just another kind of insult to the rest of the world that the fashion industry kind of does on a constant basis. But that's my, you know, rant.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, just because that you know, line there, using essentially the culture to sell its thing, but you know, going to Ben's point, yeah, you're right. They seem very enthusiastic about participating in the photo shoot, and they seem also very kind of worldly in the fact that they know what they were doing. But yeah, I don't know anything about the payment aspect of it. I'm gonna guess they probably didn't get paid, or if they did, it was probably, you know, a lot to them, but not a lot to the company. I don't know. I'll have to have Steve McCurry on the show, and he can explain for himself what they did during that photo shoot. So I will work on that.
I would think that if, in terms of experience, anybody that's even playing an extra in a commercial shoot is going to have to be compensated. So I imagine that there was some transaction of money.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I guess in reading all these other peripheral articles around this, I think it's kind of exaggerated by saying controversy, but he talks about, you know, he's not a commercial photographer. He's a journalist, and
Right.
that he wanted to really look at the culture of Africa and bring that forward through this photo shoot. So obviously, it's got people talking about the subject matter, about the culture, about the people, whether or not we agree with the ad campaign or how it was done. I think he's achieved what every
Right.
journalist hopes to achieve in starting a conversation about it. So I think in some ways it was quite clever.
Absolutely. And who knows? One of those dancers could be a model for an agency. Have you read the? Have you seen the story? There was one posted recently about a photographer who was shooting a British rap artist, I believe, as they were walking through the streets, I believe, in Africa. And there was a woman with a bunch of bread on her head. They're selling bread, bread merchant. She was walking by, and she just happened to be in the photograph. And somebody thought that, you know, she was beautiful, and they wanted to be, you know, her to be a model. So who knows? But anyways, if anybody else has anything else to add about that, if not, we'll move on to our next topic. Moving on. All right, so we're talking about gear during our gear talk segment. So Canon recently announced the 80D, and as a camera, this doesn't really intrigue me. You know, it's not what I've been looking for, and I'm kind of disappointed in Canon for not going the 4K route with their smaller body cameras. I was really hoping the 1DX Mark II would be
Score one for
indicative.
Nikon.
Exactly. The one time Nikon beats Canon, once in the entire history.
Yeah, sure.
Anyways, so I was really sad that, you know, the 80 didn't have 4K shooting, but it's a solid camera if you're, you know, into shooting photos. But what I thought was interesting was the lens they came out with for it has a power zoom attachment. So what I want to talk to you about is, one, does the 80D do anything for you? Do you care at all about it? Two, what do you think of this power zoom capability? If you shoot video, I think it's, you know, nice to have. If you don't shoot video, you probably don't care. And three, what's your favorite lens? And go.
Hey, I'm completely out of my wheelhouse on this topic, so I'm not even gonna lie. I'm a Nikon shooter, so I don't really have any opinions to tout about Canon, and I very rarely shoot video. So I
What's your
don't.
favorite
I don't know.
lens?
Well, I like the 85.
85
So
millimeter?
yeah,
You have to stop on
1.4.
that. 1.4. Wow.
Yeah.
Good lens. Get that nice bokeh. Why do you like that lens? What's your favorite? What's your thing about that?
Well, I think it. I don't know. There's just something really beautiful about it. I like to get. I don't like to be far away from my subjects, and I feel like it allows me to just be in there with them, and I don't know. It captures them better than any of my other lenses. Now, my other like go-to lens on the fly is a 24 to 70. That's the other one I keep in my bag at all times. So
Okay. So a light kit.
yeah.
What
you,
is the 85 what you shoot most of your portraits with?
No, not necessarily. It really depends on the individual person. So I got a 50 and 85, 24 to 70, 70 to 200. So well, I got a lot to choose from, but the 85 is by far one of my favorite portrait lenses.
You ever have to whip out that 500 millimeter?
I don't have one of those, and that would be a arm workout. Plus, it would cost like I'd have to sell my car. I'd have to buy one of those, right?
What do you need a car for? You need a lens.
I know, right?
How about you, Ben? What do you shoot with?
Yeah, so I'm like Stacy. I also use Nikons, and I don't shoot a whole lot of video. So Dave, you're outnumbered today. But,
for once.
Yeah, I don't shoot a lot of video, and I think one of the reasons I haven't really gotten into it is the focusing thing. So I just find it really difficult to focus and keep the camera steady, and so it sounds like this new lens from Canon can help you do that if I was understanding how it works. So if Nikon I'm not even sure if they have something like that, but if they came out with something like that, it's something I would look at because it might help me sort of move into video more. So that's interesting.
No, the attachment is really just more of a zoom. So you know how normally when you zoom a lens, you turn it or move it in and out. This allows you to zoom it with basically a push of a button. Zoom by
sorry,
one.
I said focus, but zooming. Right, zooming is really kind of a pain with the lenses I have now, which is kind of why I don't shoot a lot of video. So, and like Stacy, I have the 24 to 70 and use it kind of most of the time. But my the lens I wanted to talk about is an old lens. It's a 17 to 35 f2.8, and I just love this. I really love it. I like to work close to people, but still have it wide, and so the 17 allows me to do that, and then the 35 is just a great focal length all around. So I just love this lens. I picked it up several years ago, used, and it's still something I always keep with me.
Yeah, I would say that the focus thing that you talk about with DSLRs has really been more of a problem in the past. I mean, obviously when the Canon 5D Mark II came out, that was one of the first DSLRs that could shoot video. Obviously Nikon had the first. I can't remember the name of the camera that had it, but they had it first, shooting 720p. Now, obviously, in that generation, there was no autofocus. But I think, a lot of camera manufacturers, Canon included, and Nikon, both have really taken a large step towards improving the autofocus on video. So if that's something that's preventing you, I would definitely look into what the options are available. I was actually promoting a video last week, I believe, about the C300, which is Canon's state-of-the-art C300 Mark II, which is Canon's state-of-the-art video camera, and the autofocus on that is supposed to be remarkable. So there you go.
There's a lot of C words being thrown around in the podcast.
Hey, let's talk about that Nikon D5, huh? 4K in the camera? What?
Hey, so about just getting on that video focusing for a minute, or DSLR focus for video, there is a system by Manfrotto. Like if you're a stabilization system called the Simpler Rig, but one of the cooler parts of it is the actual remote control for, you can like set 2 or 3 points of focus. So if you want to do, anyway, it's really, really neat. So if you get time, Manfrotto, they've got the remote for the Simpler Rig.
Great. Well, we'll include that in the show notes. So make sure to throw that link into the. Throw me that link, and I'll throw it in the show notes. Thank you, Stacy.
That's
Appreciate
my
that.
little geek out for you guys for a minute.
Woo! Zach,
Yeah.
back me up here. You love Canon, right? You're a Canon shooter, aren't you? Talk to
Well,
me about. Oh no, wait.
Well, I do actually. I occasionally use the C100, C300 series to shoot video because, again, problem is the clip length, which is the big reason for me that makes DSLR video so difficult. Is trying to do a sit-down interview with someone, and then, oh, by the way, it's 24 minutes. We got to stop. I don't, just hold that tear on the corner of your eye and let me hit record again. But which has actually happened in interviews that I've done before,
gosh.
which is super awkward. It's just like, okay, just don't say anything for the next 15 seconds. Yeah, I mean, the autofocus is also a big problem. I usually never use it at all because again, I usually shoot a lot of my video interviews on the 17 to 35 2.8 Nikon, and it's so wide, and for me, I've been kind of working with DSLRs and video long enough since I had the D90. And which is the first one, at least, to do. Wasn't the first one in Nikon to do. I think it did 1080. But the D3S was, by the way, the first one to do 720p, and it could shoot a candle lit video. It was amazing. But yeah, and I look forward to whatever Canon can do when it comes to video. I just wish that Nikon would get on it. I'm looking for the Nikon equivalent of the C100 or C300 series because I like their lenses so much better, and I like the picture quality and the video quality better. It's just that, again, the autofocus on the C100, the new updated versions, and their ability to do 4K, and it just beats anything that Nikon or any other company really has. Just completely out of the wall? What's the metaphor? I don't know.
Off the wall?
Off the wall? Sure, why not? Let's make that a thing. But yeah, beats it right out of the store. Off the chain. There you go.
Off the chain.
Yeah.
So I would say, Zach, you probably are, doing the most video. What do you think of that power zoom? Do you use power zoom?
If power zoom would be great, but it has to come with real smooth autofocus. Because a zoom, like I'm decent that I can usually kind of do a zoom and then do a slow focus at the same time to keep everything going. Power zoom would be great. And,
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. But it has to have that smooth focus because that's the one thing that's lacking between, I'm just selling my Sony Z1U, which is a old mini DV camera. But the fact that you can do whip zooms, you can do everything that like a normal you'd see in real big documentary films, but you can't do that with DSLRs unless you're ridiculously talented, which is not something I am currently at the moment, at least when it comes to being able to focus, move the camera back, and and keep an eye on the LCD. So,
Zach, all you have to do is hire a focus puller.
I just need a third arm, really. That's what I need. Yeah, but
we haven't really talked. We didn't talk too much about video, but I just want to show this off. For the audience who's listening, this is the GH4. This is the camera I've been using a lot recently, mostly for shooting video, but sometimes with stills. And what I think is cool about it is it has the power zoom functionality built into the lens right here. This is a power zoom lens. I also have another one that's a 80 to 200. But I think the power zoom is great. I think I think what Canon is doing is interesting to see their kind of focus on the prosumer video level. I'm really disappointed they didn't do 4K, but who knows? Maybe that's the impetus I need to move to Nikon, I guess. Then I'll be a Nikon shooter too. No, I'll hold out. I'll hold out till Canon eventually someday goes to 4K. They will do it. They got to.
For one, I'm going to give you $5 for using the word impetus in the conversation, and two, I'm going to give you another $5 for saying Nikon.
Woo! $10. That's the most money this show has made.
Lunch is on this guy.
Woo! I'll make sure not to spend it all in one place. All right. Well, I'll make sure to, if I ever have this same group on, it'll be Nikon cameras all the way. We'll talk about the D5 and the D500 and some new lens Nikon comes out with. The one thing I'm really looking forward to, which I might purchase from Nikon is their Key Mission 360, their 360
Yep.
video camera. I don't know if any of you have heard about this or are interested in that, but I think VR is really a new frontier for visual journalism.
I live with a Nikon professional services representative, so.
So how many Key Missions do you have?
What's
Literally,
that?
just last week I became an NPS member. So
Good for you.
hello.
Do you have the Key Mission 360, like in-house, by chance? Or have you messed with it?
No, I haven't, and I think my husband's actually, he may have it or he's got it locked away because I tend to break shit. Oh, I better not say the S word. I tend to break gear. That's my G version, but no, I haven't played with it yet. I'm looking forward to it. It's really neat. So.
Ben, since you're a
No,
Nikon user,
I hadn't even heard about it. Now I'm intrigued. So,
are you tracking the 360 video and photo revolution that's going on?
not really. I've seen just a couple things on the web, but not really. I'm really not a big gearhead, and I like still photography. It just still really does something for me. And the gear, I call this gear, but the gear that I'm most interested in right now, Stacy said she's going to sell her car. I'm buying a car now, and I'm getting my Japanese driver's license. And
Wow.
I think that is going to help me take my photography to the next level. Because just getting around and getting to places where, right now I just take the train everywhere, which is great. But, just being able to have that freedom of getting around is something I'm looking forward to. So
Definitely. This might sound like a stupid question, so excuse me if it is, but do you speak Japanese?
I'm taking Japanese classes. I do not speak Japanese well, but I'm in classes now, and so that's another thing that definitely I think is going to help me with my photo work and just meeting new people and finding new stories. So.
But you're able to work and make a living in Japan even though you don't speak the language fluently.
Yeah. I mean, so I should say I lived in Korea for about 10 years, sort of 13 years, but about 10 years total, kind of on and off there in the U.S. So I still go back to Korea and work. A lot of my commercial work is there, actually. So, I'm in this transition phase now of learning about Japan. My wife is Japanese, and learning Japanese language, learning to drive on the left side of the road, that kind of thing. So yeah, I'm just learning and making the transition. But
Okay, cool. Good luck out there. So there was an article on Petapixel that talked about 14 things I would tell my younger self as they were starting in the photography industry. So I thought, what would I tell my younger self? What would I tell 18-year-old Dave Murphy who's looking to go into the Marine Corps and trying to figure out his life? Would I tell him to do a different career? Would I tell him to focus on something else? Would I, what would I say to him? So what would you tell your younger self if you had the opportunity to go back in time? First of all, when would you go back to talk to your younger self? Like at what age? And what would you tell them?
I'd actually let my younger self kind of ride out the early part of my military career because I think that you kind of have to have a bumps and bruises along the way because I think it makes you better. So failure, in order to achieve success, you have to know failure, and I think I needed that early on. So I wouldn't really intercede until I got to maybe combat camera, and then I would be like, I think I would tell myself, pick your battles, choose them wisely, and forget the small stuff. I know that seems really simple, but in dealing with a lot of the things I dealt with, it was easy to let the sort of all these other things that didn't really matter more overtake the more important things. So.
All right. Ben?
yeah, so I didn't really start freelancing and didn't really get into photography seriously until graduate school, and I think I would go back to myself in graduate school and say, take some business classes. I was taking journalism classes, and I was at IU, and they didn't really offer anything for business for journalists or for freelancers. And I really wish I'd had some training in that, just some more knowledge, because you get out and you're so happy to get your first assignment, and you don't think about negotiating, you don't think about rights, any of that stuff. I just took the assignment, yay. But I think that hurt me early on, and so yeah, I would go back then and take some business classes, and it's what I tell my students now, that if you want to get into journalism or photojournalism, you really need to have some business savvy.
Yeah. I would also say, no, sorry, I was going to say it would also be important to remind myself that you can always say no. I think when I was younger, I would always say yes to everything because I was afraid the opportunity passed me by, it wouldn't come back around again. And in doing so, I was spread too thin in order to be able to really concentrate on anything and make quality work. So anyway, that'd be one other little nugget of wisdom I would give myself.
Definitely. I think, it's funny what you mentioned, Ben, about, not knowing the business side. And I think, too often we have people saying, oh, well, I'll get you great exposure for your work.
Yeah.
People so eager to get their work published that all they care about is exposure.
Yeah, it's kind of a pyramid scheme, and I mean, okay, I'll get the exposure, but there's never going to be any money at the end of it, right? And if that's how we keep thinking, right? I'll get exposure, but the next person is also going to say the same thing. I'll give you more exposure. You just keep getting all this exposure, but it doesn't put food on the table. So.
Yeah, it's like I was saying a few weeks ago when I were talking about that photographer, the photojournalist who was giving away his work essentially for free on the Creative Commons on Flickr, and all the major candidates were using his imagery. Specifically, Donald Trump was using it as his front page, and the story there was he didn't care. He didn't care, but it wasn't his main means. He was there. He was going to school for, I think, business or communications,
right? Yeah.
Accounting, right? Yeah. So. He's doing work for free, and it may be a temporary thing, but you have this endless cycle of people doing work for free, so it never ends, because he may be done with it when he graduates and never do it again, but then there's going to be somebody else who's going to do it, and then there's going to be somebody else after him who's going to do it, and that's just what leads the whole slow decline of the career field in a lot of ways. But Zach, how about you? What would you tell your young self?
Stop burning bridges. But
when you burn the bridge, it's so bright.
It lights the way.
Flame.
I think my next tattoo is going to be a tattoo that says, "May the bridges I burn light the way." But anyway, but the biggest one is also if you can't do, I could never really do the internships because I always went to school for political science and then film. And so the kind of photojournalism internships that you kind of normally get to build those steps into the world aren't really open to you that much. At least now, every single internship I see, you have to be a full-time college student in photojournalism program or whatever. But at least try to get out there and make the connections. The best, I've freelance-wise at least, the best couple years that I've had has been the last couple years. Where I finally started making friends with a whole bunch of people in the industry who have been able to basically say, oh, hey, they've said to their editors, you got to talk to Zach. He's already in New Hampshire. He's covering the primaries. I just got an assignment off of a random friendship that I have on Facebook, and tons of things like that. And that has made me more money than probably. Not a lot, but it's made me more money than kind of anything else has in the industry that I've done. That, and also just, for God's sakes, focus on what you want to do and stop trying to go after every project. Like you were saying, don't try to do everything. Focus on the one project. I mean, look at the Humans of New York guy. He is traveling the world at the expense accounts of the UN and everybody else, doing exactly what he wants to do. And he just did one project for free on Tumblr for the longest time. And now, as far as I can tell, he's doing quite well off of that one idea. And I'm kicking myself for not just sticking with it and kind of doing that. I tend to flee the moment something gets either boring or too tough or something like that, which is my biggest problem.
Yeah, I would probably tell my younger self, I would go back to probably 17-and-a-half-year-old me, right before, probably 6 months or a year before my senior year. And I would sit down and I would talk to them and explain to them all the potential, all the opportunities, all the different avenues by which, you can make a life. Because I think I didn't have a lot of people telling me, hey, these are your options. I had the options that were placed in front of me, and I couldn't see really everything else that was, the potential out there. I don't regret any of the decisions I made, but having a broader knowledge of the opportunities out there, there's way more than you think is out there. And if you just take a minute to really do the research and look around you, you can see that, there's this opportunity which is better than this opportunity, or could be better. There's other opportunities, other potential avenues for making it. And that extends not only to what you do with like your college, if you go college education, if you go military, or if you go into work right away, but also what type of jobs you take. Similar to, again, what Stacy was saying, you don't have to accept every single job, but think about the jobs you are accepting. Don't necessarily think you have to jump at that one opportunity, and there aren't going to be other opportunities. There's always going to be work to do. Some might be better, some might be worse, some might pay better, some might pay worse, but as long as you're skilled, you're not going to not work. Also, I tell myself to invest in Google, Yahoo, Facebook,
Yeah.
and probably Microsoft, but after a certain point, sell it. But get in the ground floor of all that stuff, and then sell like as soon as they go IPO.
That's one of the biggest things that I think we're all in that 30 to 40 demo, and excuse me if anyone's younger or older, but we got kind of stuck in that area of right when film was. I literally was in. I was graduated from high school in 1999, and like 2000, 2001 was when digital became a thing. I fought it like tooth and nail. I literally have a paper I wrote back at Syracuse University when I was going to art photography there, and about how I would, talking this biography and about how I would never change shooting film, and now all I shoot is digital. And the photo industry completely collapsing, or at least collapsing and changing at the same time. And we kind of skipped, and none of us probably learned coding in school. I mean, maybe you did a little bit, Dave, not coding, but yeah. And so we're literally in that mid-generation who didn't have the kind of long-term stable photojournalist at least career, and stuck behind the kids that are coming in behind us now, with that know how to write for BuzzFeed and everything like that. So I don't know what I would actually for that aspect. I don't know what I would tell my younger self other than maybe run.
Excellent, excellent. So we're all gonna work on that time machine after this. All right. Well, let's close it off tonight with our final topic. Now, this might not be a problem for if you're a photojournalist, if you're out there, if you have a assignment, you have to go shoot something. But there was an article, or not an article, but actually a Redditor on Reddit was talking about visual blocks. So, obviously it's a creative field, but do we ever get sort of, like writers get writer's block? Do we as, visual journalists get visual block? Is that something that you ever do, or is that something where maybe you lose your, I guess, interest in taking photos or shooting video or just being creative? Has that ever happened to you? And if it has, how'd you get over it?
I think it happens to every single person, every single profession, where you wake up in the morning and you're like, I just don't want to go to work today. And it's not, for me, it's not that I lose passion about photography. It's just, just for like photography is fun for other people because it's a hobby for them. You know, photography is an occupation for me, coupled with the fact that it's also my hobby and my passion and everything else. And so um, there are times when I've been shooting a lot of the same thing and I just need a break. And it's for me. The only cure is to step away back from it for a little while and do some other things and get re-inspired. And the one thing I find that really reinvigorates me a lot of the time is looking at other people's work and you know, going to workshops and listening to other people lecture and hearing their passion and it reignites that spark in me why I'm passionate about what I do. Not that I lose sight of that, because like the Veterans Portrait Project, I've been doing that for 8 years, and there's not a day during that project where I wake up and I'm like, I wish I didn't have to do this today. But I think that's what separates the Veterans Portrait Project, which is hits a lot of notes for me outside of just the creativity aspect, but you know, versus doing a photojournalism story on, you know, some bridge being built downtown or, you know, the everyday sort of beat type of photography story.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I mean, looking at other people's work is always inspiring and sort of motivates me too, because I'm like, well, man, you know, these people are creating awesome work. I better get on it and do it too. So it's kind of, you know, a little kick in the butt to go out there and work and create better work.
What do you look at?
I mean, I love New York Times photography. The Lens blog is great. Instagram is a really good. You know, I see some of my friends on Instagram who are not professional photographers, but they've gotten really into photography because of all the new avenues like Instagram or Facebook and just all the ways to share, and they're doing really cool stuff. So that's motivational. I mean, the World Press photo stuff that's out now this last couple weeks is always good to see, and very inspirational. So looking at other people's work, and then just in terms of like a strategy, when I want to shoot and I want to get past that block, I think someone on the Reddit on that thread that you shared mentioned this. You know, just shoot with one lens. Just go out, put one lens on a body and one body, and just go out with just that, because it challenges you to look at things differently and see things that you wouldn't see if you're you know. Part of the problem with having all this gear is like it's very difficult to decide what am I going to use, you know, and you spend your time, your mental power thinking about lens choices instead of thinking about what's in front of you. And so that's something I do from time to time, is just throw one lens on, go out, spend the day shooting with that, and I find it makes me a better photographer. I find it really helps my compositional skills, because I'm, you know, shooting with my feet more, and helps me become more comfortable with each piece of gear that I have. So I think that's a good strategy.
Zach, you ever hit with that visual block?
I constantly. One of my problems is that I work as a researcher quite often, and so I'll have these kind of long spans of times where I'm not shooting anything other than my dog or my backyard, and I'm not getting out and photographing like actual news. But one of the best things that, especially when I lived in the city, I would do, like you, Ben, I would usually grab, throw my 70 to 200 millimeter on and go night shooting, because it forced me, not only because it wasn't really low light well enough, usually I'd have to find like a place to set the lens so I could get a little bit longer exposure. It makes me look at things, and I'm not a street photographer. I've always kind of stayed away from that, and so it forces me to do that a bit. The other thing I do is now I finally just bought a car myself as well, and is that literally just decide to go on a drive, bring your gear with you, or bring one lens with you, and pick a spot, go for an hour outside of your kind of safety zone and go for a drive. I mean, that's one thing I do kind of miss about the city, living in New York, is that you just feel like, I'm really bored. I'm going to jump on the subway for $2 and I think 75 cents now, and go to Queens, go to some random spot I've never been to before, go to shipping yards or whatever, and hit it. And yeah, I mean, luckily gas is cheap now, so I can do that a little bit more. So
Tires aren't cheap though.
yeah, tell me about it.
I haven't shot a lot of photojournalism. Recently, most of the stuff I shoot is primarily family stuff or whatever. I did shoot some stuff last week, but I've always I gotta go on the agree with you. Check out what people are doing. But I will say that's kind of a double-edged sword, because on the one hand it's like, oh wow, look at that cool thing that they're doing, and then you're like, well, I can't do that because they're doing it and they're doing it really well. So let me go think of something else I can do. Oh, and then you go, and if you go down the internet rabbit hole too far, you'll realize that everyone's doing everything. So you kind of have to mediate it, but definitely go and get yourself inspired. I like to look at photo contests. Gizmodo used to do a weekly photo contest, and that was always something. I didn't participate in them, but it was always neat to see what people are doing and the different ways you can be creative with your camera gear. So if you're looking to look for unorthodox ways to use your gear or unorthodox ways to capture subjects, there are a lot of different photo contest websites out there that say, hey, use one specific lens, or try this technique, or shoot on the ground, or whatever. That's like their weekly thing. So that's a good way to drive sort of the passion, get the engine going. But taking a break from it as well, if it's something you can afford to do. Obviously, if you're a working visual journalist and you're just going out there shooting all the time, that may not be an option. But if you just take a break from it and give your brain a rest, I think that could also help. But that would I recommend. In the Reddit forum, one of the guys was like, take a photo walk, and the other guy was like, photo walk, that's a stupid idea. What are you talking about? Photo walk isn't bad if you have someone else you're walking with. I would say it's one thing if you have the eye and you have the vision, which you do if you're doing this as a job. But if you have someone else who can try and let you see things maybe that you're not seeing, I think that's where photo walks are helpful. So they're not completely bad. Any other thoughts on the subject?
I've been on a couple of photo walks before, and when I was living in Korea, I helped establish a group there, Busan Light Stalkers, and they did a lot of photo walks, and I went a couple of times, but when it's like 15 people, mostly foreigners, walking through a Korean market or whatever, it's difficult to make pictures because you're such a disruption to sort of whatever's around you, because so many people, right? So you really need to, like you said, if it's one other person or two other people, I think it's great. But I just found it kind of difficult to make pictures with a large group of people around. I like working by myself usually.
My other suggestion would be I'm sorry if are you done, Ben?
Yeah, I'm done, please.
Okay. There's kind of a delay, so I don't know if I'm talking over anybody. But my other suggestion is, and I think you hit this a little bit, David, is that there are people out there shooting the same things you're interested in. But what I always tell my students is the stories or these subjects may have been covered already, and in a really creative way that inspires you, but it's not been covered by you. And you're always going to bring a whole different perspective to that type of shoot because you have all your other influences on you. And so, there was that recently a photo shoot done, which I've seen it go viral over the last couple of months, I think, about like 9 different photographers photographed the same guy, but they were given a different premise at the start of the shoot, and so they all ended up with a different outcome. And I think that is a prime example of how your inspiration, your point of view, and your perspective, and your upbringing, and all these other factors will impact that shoot on you. So don't throw in the towel before you even get started. That's ludicrous. Just go do it and do it for you and do it the way you want to do it.
Right. Don't let other people's ideas discourage you.
Right.
But absolutely, I completely agree. Thank you. And I threw that link in there if anybody wants to go check that out. I'll throw that also link in the show notes. That 6 photographers shot the same person. Ben, you bring up the World Press Photo Competition, and I just want to know what were your thoughts, or what overall your thoughts of the winner, specifically, the #1 winner, the shot of the baby being passed through the barbed wire. Do you have any thoughts on the selections or the work?
Yeah, I mean, I think the selections this year are quite different from last year, which is a good thing.
Right, 20% of the imagery from last year was kicked out because of
right, and the winning photo story was manufactured, and I mean, I thought that was really clear even before the controversy really started. This is last year's. I think it was like the first place photo story. It was called The Dark Heart of Europe, and I thought it was clear from the pictures and the captions that it was kind of contrived. And so there was a huge controversy around that. They ended up disqualifying that winner, basically based on one photograph, I think, where he had misrepresented what it was in the caption, and he had put the flash inside the car, and it was his cousin in the car. This year it looks like they tried to go back to basics. The first place, the single image, it's refugees passing a baby through barbed wire. It's really grainy. I think it was shot at like 6400 ISO, like 1/5 of a second or something. It's a little blurry, but it's just an incredible moment, and it's important photojournalism. So I think they really just went back to the basics on it, and I think it's a good choice.
Okay, great, thank you.
Can I just give a shout out to my friend Mary Calvert, who really rocked it this year? I mean, she's been rocking it. This is like a long-term project she's been working on, so if you guys haven't checked it out, you should. Obviously, she did really well in the contest this year, but she was awarded the Alexia Foundation grant for this work, and I think that really is a demonstration of taking on something that you're passionate about and pursuing it, not because you have a client asking you to do it, but because it's something you're interested in, and that's what Mary did, and damn, it really shows she's vested, so that work really is pretty powerful.
Okay, great, thanks. Zach, anything else you'd like to add to the World Press Photo thoughts?
Yeah, I just repeat exactly what Ben said. I'm so happy that they've seemingly kind of turned back towards. I mean, the past couple of years, it seems like it's mostly been, even if it's not been like as set up as last year's award winner, it's always been these photos that were relative. They looked contrived. They looked massively edited. Down to like switching the original from color to black and white, or upping the contrast to the point where it goes off the meter or goes off the level on Lightroom. I'm just happy to see that a lot of these look like actual photos that you would see from the wire services. It gives me a feeling that for once I actually have a chance of competing with them again, because usually it's been like, well, I have no chance of going to the middle of nowhere Africa and waiting for 6 months for this one photograph of a solar eclipse that clearly that guy was on assignment for and everything like that, or just doing setup shots that I would never do in a million years for photojournalism. That it gives me hopefulness for at least for photojournalism as a field. So
absolutely, and I thought that the Petapixel podcast, Sharky James, friend of the show, he actually did a pretty good assessment of what he thought of the World Press Photo Contest, more the 2016 photo winner, and then I listened to his description, and now I'm seeing the photograph, and it's definitely interesting to see what is winning, what is the best photograph essentially in the world, in at least according to this organization, and it's not what you would look at and say, oh, that's a textbook quality, perfect photo. You know, it's blurry, it's grainy, it's not sharp. It looks like it was produced in the 80s, but it just goes to show that it's really the content that matters. It really trumps all, and I think this photograph represents that. And I'd also like to add that it was shot with a Canon 5D Mark II, so in your face, Nikon users. In fact, they did a.
If it was shot with a Nikon, it would look better. Same
Yeah,
moment.
But it wouldn't be first place. If it looked better, it would not be first place.
That's the problem, is you got to shoot with a Canon to get that blurry, grainy look. With a Nikon, it'd be tack sharp. It would be, you know, everything would be focused, and it would look like it would be staged. That's the problem, and
Right.
You got to shoot. I mean, that's why you shoot. You know, I mean, you shoot. It's either that, or you shoot with a, you know, oatmeal canister, you know, and just put a, you know, big sheet of film and just wait for the light to come in. You know, one way or the other.
Or a potato.
Either photo will be just as sharp as a Canon.
I'm just happy to see that a 7-year-old camera has made the news in terms of recognition, and that I own that camera. So, anyways, all right. Well, let's finish up the show with our picks of the week. So, panelists, what are you going to share with us? Well, Ben, why don't we start with you, buddy?
Okay. Yeah, I chose some pants.
Whoa! Ain't no party like a pants party.
Yeah. I just think being comfortable is just so important when you're working. And I found these pants, and they're tactical pants. They're called Proper Men's Lightweight Tactical Pant. I think they make women's as well. The company is Proper. I know a lot of people like the 511 tactical pants. I wasn't able to get. They didn't ship to Japan, but the Propers did, and I really love them. They're ripstop fabric, so you can get on the ground and crawl around, and they're gonna stay intact. And they are lightweight. They're very comfortable. They have a lot of pockets. They have a nice cell phone pocket right on the front hip. Really good location. So I wear them all the time now. They're super comfortable, and if you're looking for a good pair of shooting pants, check them out.
All right, great, thank you. Stacy, you got something for us?
Of course. So I'm often asked, like, especially because I do a lot of portraiture, do photographers need model releases? And you know, the old school way is to carry around a piece of paper with like the little write-up and everything. But what I wanted to share was the easy release. So you can get it for your iPhone or your smartphone, and it's a way for you to take a picture of your subject matter, fill in all the pertinence, and they can actually do a digital signature, and you can have a witness on the location. So I have shared that link with y'all. It's really good, and you can modify anything you need to. So, and then you can export a PDF. You can send it to you know, your editor or whomever needs it, and it's pretty handy.
Yeah, model release on the phone is the way to go, in my opinion. I shot a short film, and I had to get, you know, releases from people who I filmed, and it was just super easy. Just input their information on your phone, just like you're putting their contact info, and have them do the little finger signature. You're done. Stores it all on there. Like I said, you can export it, save it, archive it, put it in the cloud. That's the way to go. Zach, you got anything for us this week?
Yeah, I mean, mine is, at least my backup, since we already touched upon the World Press, is actually what we were kind of briefly touched upon was Petapixel is the cameras that captured winning shots in World Press photo. Shamefully, it looks like Canon won on the number amount. Nikon, obviously, a close second. I found it interesting because I still haven't been able to at least hunt down which photo it is. But there is, as I would believe, for the first time ever, a GoPro on the list.
Oh, really?
So
Wow.
there's a GoPro photo taken. I'm still trying to find which photo was the GoPro one, but
And one Sony photograph.
yeah.
So good to see Sony in there, although, you know, I hear the Micro Four Thirds aren't as good for the photojournalism as the standard DSLRs, but who knows? I mean, I think we'll see more of that as Sony becomes, you know.
And that was with their RX100, a point and shoot.
Really?
It's a high-end point and shoot. Obviously, it's a $500, $600 one. But yeah, that's really interesting. I've seen a handful of photojournalists starting to carry Sony's high-end point and shoots as kind of a backup camera for when either they got to shoot something sensitive or they're just having fun.
Yeah, I would be very surprised if we didn't see something like the Sony A7S II, show up in this competition or other competitions. I mean, that low light sensitivity and capability, you just can't beat that. All right, well well. I'm sorry, I forgot to include my pick of the week. How silly of me. Okay, so I'm going to throw out a blog from Photo Shelter. It's in their business category. It's all about business. We talked about, Ben, you mentioned business classes, and what I think is really cool, besides just talking about business in general, they've got a reoccurring feature where they ask photographers, how much would you charge for a specific shoot? Or, how much would you charge to do your job? And I think that's really eye-opening, and it kind of goes back to what Zach and I talked about in an earlier show about essentially putting your price out there so that other people can learn from it. And so I really like that article. So check that out. And of course, the World Press photo winners, check those out as well. So that is the show. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for all listening. Before we let go of our panelists and we all sign off, let's go ahead and throw out our plugs, tell you where you can find out more about us. Ben?
Yeah, I'd just like you to check out my website. It's wellerpix.com. It's WELLERPIX. Got a lot of stuff on there from Japan, from Korea, my industrial work, so just check that out, and you can find my Instagram and stuff on there too.
Yeah, before we let you go, I gotta say one thing. Japan! Did anybody get that? No? Okay, moving on.
Okay. You'll have to explain it to me later.
Yep, offline.
All
right. Stacy, where can people find out more about you?
You know what? Actually, one of the things I would really like people to check out is my long-term project, the Veterans Portrait Project, and you can find that at veteransportraitproject.com. I've also got a Facebook page and a blog where we feature one veteran a week and kind of give their backstory and share some of their old military photos and let them kind of share their own story in a way too. So it's really great. I boast them and also my assistant who does the writing on the blog. She does an incredible job, and it really takes a village to do this project, so I don't operate in a vacuum.
When's your next big portrait shoot? I know you go to different events and shoot veterans all the time.
Yes, I'm actually headed up to Hickory, North Carolina. I've got, like 14 cities on the books so far this year that are locked in. So,
wow.
And this year is the 75th anniversary of Pearl Harbor, so that's a huge event this year.
Excellent. We'll look forward to seeing that work.
Thank you.
Zach, what do you got for us?
And as always, it's zdroberts.com on Twitter, on Instagram, and on Facebook.
Excellent. And you can find me at djmphoto.com and everything related to the show at that website until next week when I do the website of the show that you have. You can find all the stuff there. But go to my website for right now. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, subscribe to us on YouTube. I'll probably sign up for another couple dozen social media outlets before next week's show that you can follow us on there. Okay, well, hey, panelists, thank you both for being on the show. It's been wonderful having you on. We had a great conversation. I've really enjoyed and appreciate your time. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Stacy. For Zach D. Roberts, I am David J. Murphy. This has been Around the Lens, and we're out.